The city was a beast, a beautiful, glittering, suffocating beast. For Eleanor Vance, CEO of Vance Enterprises, it had been her lifeblood for 20 years. Every skyscraper was a monument to a deal closed, every street a testament to a sleepless night. But lately, the concrete and glass felt less like a kingdom and more like a cage. The board meetings were a blur of jargon. The expensive dinners a performance she no longer cared to give. One frantic Tuesday, she impulsively bought it, a 200-year-old house an hour outside of the city. Abandoned and forgotten, its listing a single, blurry photo of a gabled roof half hidden by overgrown ivy. Her CFO thought she was having a breakdown. Her assistant, bless her soul, simply booked the moving truck. The reality of her purchase hit her the moment she stepped out of her town car. The air smelled not of exhaust and street food, but of damp earth and pine. The house stood on a small hill, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the wilderness. The front porch sagged, a victim of time and neglect. Inside, dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the gloom. The floors creaked with every step, and cobwebs draped from every corner like forgotten party streamers. Eleanor, a woman who could command a boardroom with a glance, was shocked. This wasn't a project. It was an act of faith. She'd spent her life building things from blueprints and spreadsheets. This was different. This was visceral. She started small. She ripped up the faded floral wallpaper in what she decided would be the kitchen. Underneath, she found a layer of newspaper from 1957, with headlines about a local harvest festival. She spent an entire afternoon chipping away at old plaster, revealing the solid hand-hewn beams beneath. Her polished leather gloves were swapped for work-worn fabric ones, her designer suits for faded jeans and an old flannel shirt. The first month was a blur of sweat, blisters, and discoveries. She found a rusted-out cast-iron stove in the cellar and a tiny, carved wooden bird in the fireplace mantel. The house began to speak to her, whispering stories of the families who had lived within its walls. She learned to mix mortar, sand floors, and the profound satisfaction of painting a fresh coat of white over a wall that had been a grimy beige for 100 years. One evening, as she was sanding an old floorboard, a neighbor, an elderly woman named Martha, brought over a plate of homemade biscuits. "Heard the city girl bought the old Selwood place," Martha said with a kind smile. "My great-grandmother grew up there." Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her chest. That had nothing to do with the physical labor. She invited Martha inside, and they sat on the floor, surrounded by cans of paint and tools, as Martha recounted stories of the house as a bustling farmstead, a place of births and gatherings, of laughter and tears. As the months passed, the house transformed. The vacant eyes of the windows were replaced with sparkling panes of glass. The sagging porch was fortified and painted. The wilderness was tamed into a budding garden, and with every nail she hammered, every brushstroke of paint, Eleanor felt herself changing too. The suffocating beast of the city faded into a distant memory. The relentless, high-pressure deadlines were replaced by the rhythm of the seasons and the quiet hum of a house being brought back to life. One crisp autumn morning, Eleanor stood on her restored porch, a mug of coffee warming her hands. She looked out at the rolling hills, the sun glinting off the newly laid roof. She was still Eleanor Vance, CEO, but she was also something new. She was a restorer, a builder, a woman who had found her purpose not in conquering the world, but in healing a small, forgotten piece of it. She hadn't left the city to escape, she realized. She'd left to come home. The scent of baking bread and fresh-cut flowers filled the air, a stark contrast to the sterile, climate-controlled offices Eleanor had once inhabited. It had been nearly a year since she'd left the city, and the house, once a derelict shell, now stood as a testament to her new life. Sunlight poured through the freshly painted windows, illuminating the gleaming floorboards she had sanded by hand. The kitchen, with its restored cast-iron stove and a large wooden table she'd salvaged from a local barn, was the heart of her world. Her old life felt like a dream, a frenetic and exhausting one. She no longer checked her phone every 5 minutes. The only ringing she heard was the jingle of the wind chimes on her porch. She had found a rhythm here, a quiet satisfaction in the simple acts of tending her garden, mending a fence, and sharing coffee with her neighbor, Martha. Then came the knock on the door, a sharp, insistent rap that was jarringly out of place. Eleanor opened it to find Robert. her former CFO standing on her porch, looking as out of place as a penguin in the Sahara. His tailored suit was impeccable, his expression a mix of shock and utter disbelief. "Eleanor?" he said, his eyes scanning the beautifully restored house and the lush flower beds. Is this really it?" She just smiled, a genuine, unforced smile he hadn't seen in years. "Come in, Robert. I'm just about to pull the bread from the oven." He stepped inside, his polished shoes scuffing on the floor. He looked at the walls, adorned with local art she'd collected, and at the mismatched but comfortable furniture. The air of quiet peace was palpable, and it seemed to confuse him more than anything. "I need to talk to you," he said, skipping the small talk. He laid a sleek tablet on her kitchen table, its screen glowing with charts and graphs. "The board is in a crisis. We've got an offer from the consortium. A full buyout, 20% over market value. It's the deal of a lifetime, Eleanor. They need you to come back and lead the negotiations. No one else has your touch." Eleanor pulled a golden brown loaf from the oven, the warmth of the bread filling the room. She sliced a piece and offered it to him on a simple wooden plate. "Have some," she said. "I used the sourdough starter from Martha." Robert stared at the bread, then at her. "Eleanor, are you hearing me? This is a billion-dollar deal. Your legacy." She sat down across from him, her hands folded calmly on the table. "I hear you, Robert. I've been thinking about legacy a lot lately. In the city, I thought it was about building a company, about numbers and acquisitions." She gestured to the house around them. "Out here, I've learned that legacy is in the things you build with your own hands. It's in the history of this house and the community I've become a part of." He shook his head, a mix of frustration and pity on his face. "This is a sabbatical, Eleanor. It's time to come back to reality." She took a bite of her bread, savoring the simple, earthy flavor. "This is my reality, Robert. The old one was the dream." She looked him in the eye, her gaze clear and unwavering. "I'm not coming back. I'm not for sale." A silence hung between them, thick with the weight of her finality. Robert picked up his tablet, the light from its screen no match for the sun pouring through the window. He finally understood. She wasn't having a breakdown or a midlife crisis. She had simply found something more valuable than any deal he could ever offer. He left a few minutes later, the faint aroma of his expensive cologne quickly replaced by the comforting scent of baked bread and pine. Eleanor watched him drive away, a lone, pristine car vanishing down a dusty country road. The old life with its deals and demands was gone. She was home, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly whole. 2 years passed. The fields around Eleanor's house had cycled through green and gold, and back again. The winding dirt road leading to her home was now familiar to her, every turn and pothole a part of a journey she'd come to love. The city, with its relentless pace and glittering lights, was a ghost, a memory of a different woman. Eleanor was now a staple of the local community, known not as the former CEO, but as the woman who had brought the old Selwood house back to life. Her restoration project had been a success not just for her own home, but for her soul. She had discovered an immense satisfaction in the tangible, in the act of building and healing. She realized her skills weren't limited to boardrooms and balance sheets. They could be applied to a different kind of enterprise. With the help of a few local friends and her old contacts, she created the Heritage Restoration Fund, a small nonprofit dedicated to preserving the historical buildings of the county. Her first project was the old grist mill, a beautiful, crumbling stone structure by the river that had stood silent for over 50 years. This project was different. It wasn't just for her. It was for the entire community. She drew up blueprints, sourced local contractors, and used her negotiation skills to secure donations. But the work felt less like a transaction and more like a shared act of love. She spent her days alongside volunteers, hauling timber, sifting through rusted gears, and cleaning centuries of grime from the millstones. The mill's grand reopening was on a crisp autumn afternoon, a day marked by the very same kind of clear, golden light that had first illuminated the dust motes in her own abandoned house. The whole town came out. Children ran across the newly laid wooden bridge, and elders pointed out where their grandparents had once worked. Eleanor stood to the side, watching the celebration. She saw Martha, her old friend, laughing with a group of women by the riverbank. She saw the young contractor who had helped her from the beginning, now standing proudly beside his wife. No one asked her about quarterly profits or hostile takeovers. They spoke of the new life she had brought to a forgotten landmark. The sound of the mill wheel turning for the first time in generations. Suddenly she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Robert. He was on vacation nearby and had read about the mill's reopening in a local newspaper. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "It's incredible, Eleanor," he said, genuinely in awe. "You built this. Not a company, not a legacy, but something real." She smiled, a peaceful contentment in her eyes. "This is my legacy, Robert. It's what I was always meant to build." He understood now. Her journey wasn't an escape from the city, but a homecoming to herself. Her success wasn't measured in market shares, but in the creak of a restored mill wheel, the joy on a child's face, and the quiet satisfaction of a life built from the ground up, by hand. The years that followed were not marked by the signing of multi-million-dollar contracts or the launch of new products, but by the slow, steady rhythm of the seasons. Eleanor's life was measured in different ways now. By the first buds on the apple trees she planted, by the harvest of her vegetable garden, and by the anniversaries of the restored buildings she helped bring back to life. She never fully left the business world behind. She became an advisor for community development and historical preservation, lending her sharp mind and strategic planning skills to a new kind of bottom line, the well-being of a small town. The same meticulous spreadsheets that once tracked corporate assets now charted volunteer hours and fundraising goals for a new community library. One winter evening, as the first snowflakes of the year began to fall, Eleanor sat on the porch of her home, wrapped in a thick blanket. She watched the lights of the town flicker on below, each one a testament to a life she was now a part of. The scent of wood smoke curled from the mill's chimney, and she could hear the distant, muffled sound of laughter from the town square where children were playing in the snow. She thought of the woman who had left the city years ago, a woman trapped in a glittering cage of her own making. She had been a builder then, but of things that were cold and ephemeral. Now she was a builder of things that were warm and enduring. She hadn't just restored a house and a mill, she had restored herself. The city hadn't been an enemy to be escaped, but a crucible from which she had emerged, refined and ready to build her real life. Eleanor pulled her blanket tighter, a deep and quiet contentment settling in her bones. She wasn't in exile. She was home, and her life was an open book, its final chapters being written not with ink, but with wood and stone, with shared laughter and a sense of belonging that was more valuable than any fortune. The story of Eleanor Vance has reached a beautiful and complete conclusion. Her journey from a high-powered CEO in a world of glass and steel to a dedicated restorer in a town of wood and stone has come full circle. She has found not only a home, but a deeper purpose and a lasting sense of peace. Her story ends with her legacy defined not by market share, but by the tangible beauty and community she has helped build. There are no more major conflicts to overcome, as she has fully embraced her new life. If you have a new title or idea for a story you'd like me to write, please send it my way. I'm ready for the next adventure. Subscribe for more.